All right, so when we left off this morning, we were talking about, we had just finished causes, right? We talked about why this revolution occurred. I'm trying to get this thing squared away here best I can. If you were not here this morning, you can, obviously, you're going to need to have those notes taken care of on your own, but you can definitely utilize the information on the video here that I'm publishing. I just published. It's on my YouTube channel. It's called Fast Track, or FTT5 Review. So, all right, I'm going to pick back up here. Let's talk a little bit about, we were on number 6, which was causes of the American Revolution. I want to start with number 7, which is called irritants. You guys don't want to get going here. Hey, Keegan. Cohen. Sit down. Let's go.
Hey, give us our coach.
All right. A couple of things here that were problems that irritated the colonists. Number 1 here, we have Americans were forced to take British prisoners. All right. They were forced to take in British criminals. America was. Okay, so they sent criminals over. Yes. Number 7. Irritants. That's great penmanship there too. Another thing that was a problem was northern colonies wanted to stop the slave trade but could not. Another irritant here for the colonists, royal governors looked down on the colonists. So this is an issue. Just a reminder here, not only the royal governors looked down, but who else looked down upon the colonists? Eli.
People from Great Britain.
People from Great Britain, more specific.
Like the military?
Yeah, the soldiers during the French and Indian War. During the French and Indian War. That was the first rift that we had during that time with the military. Okay. Let's talk some more here. Another thing here. Of course, this is all under the big subheading that we started this morning that was called Revolutionary. I'm sorry. No. It's just part of the American Revolution. Okay. Let's talk about British debt. Another factor here. This is the big one. Americans were seen as subjects of the royal crown, which they were, and as a result of that, they were asked to bear the cost of the French and Indian War. So through taxes, they were asked to make sure that they helped to pay for it. Again, as I'm speaking here, remember, you want to make sure that you're writing down what I'm saying as well, not just what I'm writing down on the board. Okay. Let's see. One of the contributing factors to this cost was the century of fighting versus the French. That, of course, culminated that led to the French and Indian War. There's also the debt that was incurred by Britain with regards to troops being left in America. Right? We talked about that. These troops needed to help protect the Americans from the Indians, and as John alluded to already today, there was a rift, kind of a disagreement here between the colonists and the British regarding the colonial role in the French-Indian War. Colonists thought they were kind of getting a bad deal because they thought they were looked down upon, and British felt that the colonists did a poor job. All right. So again, sticking with this theme of the American Revolution, let's talk about types of protest here that took place. We've got speeches. Guys like James Otis, and I think it should be Otis, not Otix. Typo. And Patrick Henry. AT, what's up, man? Oh, that was up in Canada, right? Off of Maine. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I can't remember the name of it. But I know what you're talking about. Yes. Yes.
Who was the second guy who gave speaking?
Second guy would have been Patrick Henry. They also responded with harassment. And what I mean by this is they would burn governors' homes. Thomas Hutchinson of Massachusetts was one. Else went bye-bye.
That's pretty steep right there.
That's pretty hardcore.
Let's just burn his home to the ground after. No big deal.
Hmm?
That was way before that.
Mm-hmm. There was the boycotts, where the colonists refused to buy British goods. Colonists refused to buy British goods. Yes. What was that, John? Mm-hmm. Non-consumption and non-importation. Good call. We had the committees of correspondence. There should be 2 R's in correspondence. Yeah, there's 2 R's. Committee of correspondence. This was, of course, the method in which colonies talked to one another. We also had propaganda and pamphlets. Very important one there, of course, was Common Sense by Thomas Paine, which was written in 1776. You guys ready for this one? This is going to be huge right here, what we're about to go through. Cohen. Common Sense. All right, here's the big list for today, folks. Let's talk about catalysts. What's a catalyst?
Something that speeds up a reaction.
Yes, very good, John. So here we go. Ready? First one here. Proclamation of 1763, we brought that up this morning. That, of course, said that colonists could not move past the Appalachian Mountains, so anything west of the Appalachians, British colonists could not move past that. People were in 13 colonies. You're going to want to make sure that you know Sugar Act, 1764. This, of course, redoes the molasses. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 65. No, it's the stamp. 65.
I think it's 64. I have it down. If it's 65, then my apologies. All right. Don't ever question me again, Jordan. Jordan. That's on video. Whoops. So don't ever question me again. Just joking. It might be 65. I think it's 60. I have it 64 in my notes. Sugar Act, yeah. Did I say stamp? I said I have it on video. I could go back and look. All right. A Sugar Act of 1764. All right. This, of course, replaced the Molasses Act, and it lowers tariffs in hopes of compliance. The Molasses Act lowered tariffs in hope of compliance, and there was a duty that was placed on sugar, textiles, coffee, and wine. So the Molasses Act was passed. They said, let's lower the tariffs. Let's hope that we can get people to stop smuggling stuff. And then the Sugar Act comes around, reverses that, and they start to tax sugar, textiles, coffee, and wine. Currency Act of 1764. This says that colonists can't make paper money. And so this really impacts the colonists because now they're thinking, well, how can we trade if we can't make our own money?
So no paper money or?
Yeah, no paper money. Coins. When was the Stamp Act again, girls? Jordan, come on. 17 what? There you go, 65. Stamp Act of 1765. This act says that there has to be a tax essentially paid on all legal documents. Money was supposed to go back to England. It was later dumped. Yeah, I think so. That was what they talked about, right? Playing cards, any kind of legal documents. I know your textbook talks about it. I think your Fast Track to 5 does too. What? Wills, yep. Certificates. All right. Let's see here. We have the good old Quartering Act. Of 1765. This says that colonists must provide room and board for any troops that need room and board. Military was a lot different back then. Some of the soldiers actually had part-time jobs, remember, in the city to kind of help cover the costs of living. Yeah, John?
The book said something about the first Recording Act was just they had to provide like food and supplies, and then when the Intolerable Act came around, that's when they actually had to house them.
House them as well. Okay, all right. So there's that distinction there, right, between the two. Okay. I think I'm getting to that too coming up here. The Virginia Act. 1765 as well. I'm sorry. Whoa, my bad. I misread that. It's the Virginia Resolution. This was in 1765. This was Patrick Henry. And this is a resolution passed in Virginia's legislature that essentially said that only Virginia, the colony of Virginia, can tax Virginians. How do you think that went over in Britain? So this, of course, sparks the Declaratory Act, 1766, in which the British Parliament says that, hey, this Declaratory Act says that we as Britain can tax any of our subjects in the colonies. We have the authority. It's kind of like the way that the state and the federal government work in our country, all right, where the federal government is supreme. The Declaratory Act basically says that, hey, we're supreme here. The British Parliament is supreme, and we can make decisions with what we see fit, and you have to comply with them if you're our subjects.
Didn't they repeal the Stamp Act?
Yeah, because it was dumped, right? They took it away, and then they came up with the Declaratory, and then, of course, all of this stuff leads into the Townshend Acts. Townshend Acts, excuse me. Named after Charles Townshend. Your A.T.
I thought you said Charles Thompson first. We were not talking about faster.
This puts a tax on imported goods, raises prices. There's, of course, a new set of writs of assistance where people can come on board your ship and check. Another thing that this act does is it suspends a New York legislature from or assembly for refusing to provide British troops with supplies. It also, with the writs of assistance, reintroduces this concept that essentially, again, allows people to come on board any ship to prevent smuggling. The British mean business here. I mean, it's picking up. All right, we also have then, in 1770, Boston Massacre. All right, and 5 people were killed after harassing. 5 people were killed after harassing troops in the street.
That one black one. 5.
Crispus Attucks, right? Yeah, thanks.
That's how you remember them.
Of course, propaganda was used in this, right? Paul Revere, the silversmith, and his famous depiction of the Boston Massacre. Remember, John Adams ends up defending these soldiers who get off. And even though John Adams becomes a president of the United States, the reason why he defended the soldiers was what? Why did he defend the soldiers? Anybody remember? It was to prove a point that all people deserve a fair trial. So kind of to stick it to Great Britain and say, look, I'll defend these people because it's the right thing to do. Now you need to give us a fair trial here in America as colonists and not treat us as second-class citizens. I have the Gatsby. We didn't talk about this one too much, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Gatsby.
That was a boat they raised that crashed.
Yep. This is in 1772. And this one, the Gatsby ship was attacked and burned in Rhode Island, off the coast of Rhode Island. Culprits were threatened to go back to England to withstand trial. Of course, there's the famous Boston Tea Party, 1773 I have for that date. The Sons of Liberty were mad about the British tea monopoly. They dressed up as Native Americans and dumped the tea out in the harbor. This, of course, led to, and I'm going to start up here.
Sons of Liberty.
Sons of Liberty, yep. Not Sons of Anarchy. This, of course, leads to the Coercive Acts / Intolerable Acts of 1774. This act does a couple of things, right? What's the purpose of the act, though, overall? To punish Boston, right? And so we have the Boston. Let's see here, Boston Port Bill. This bill essentially closes the harbor. We also have what's called administration of what, Jack?
Justice.
Okay.
I said it.
Administration of Justice, thank you, Craig. And what did the Administration of Justice Act do? Yeah, so if you had a problem with the governor, the royal governor, you could take that up with him, but he was going to be tried back in Great Britain. You think that would be a very fair trial to the colonists? Probably not. And then the Massachusetts Government Act. You'd be writing this down, right? Massachusetts Government Act does what? It limits the freedom of Massachusetts citizens to meet freely. Massachusetts Government Act. Government. And then all of this is coupled with ooh, I was spelling this right. Yeah, no, I'm not. The Quebec Act of 1774. This act grants territory as far south as the Ohio River to French in Canada. They set up a non-representative government with this bill, and it's for Catholics, and this upsets a lot of Americans, primarily, and I think I maybe, if I said this when we were taping before or not, but the treatment of the French in Canada upset the Americans because they were a little bit afraid, right, I think? Is that what your book talks about a little bit, how they thought, okay, if they're going to kind of be overbearing on these French Canadians, this might be a bad thing for us as well. So if I messed it up earlier today, I apologize. All of this stuff is a precursor for the First Continental Congress, 1774. Everybody was there except Georgia. No Georgia. When the meeting for the First Continental Congress took place, there was really two groups that emerged. There were those who wanted an immediate independence from Great Britain, and those who would still negotiate settlement. Those who wanted an immediate independence from Britain, and those who wanted to negotiate a settlement. It also establishes a colonial militia, which was led by George Washington. Pretty important name. You don't know what George Washington is?
We went through this.
AT? Breaking my heart, man. All right. We also have an American Navy established. And their job is basically to disrupt Great Britain, or excuse me, British shipping. You shouldn't call them Great Britain.
Did that colonial navy actually?
Help
Have any like surround Yorktown? Wasn't that part of the French?
That was the French, yeah. These are more of, I believe, it's like smaller, kind of like almost like from the sounds of it, almost like a buccaneering almost, kind of just to kind of disrupt the British. I don't know how much pirating they did, but it was more just to disrupt British shipping.
It seems like the British were kind of annihilating them.
Mm-hmm. Now, I have down in my notes here that they also sent Benedict Arnold to Canada to be prepared there. Really? Benedict Arnold is?
Yeah.
You know, if he would have stayed with the Americans, he probably would have been our first president. He was a rock star. He was like George W. George Washington.
Oh my God.
Okay, so shots have been fired, right? And there still is the Olive Branch petition. Which is sent out in 1775. These colonists are still making one last-ditch effort to try to mend the broken relationship with Great Britain, and so they send this olive branch petition out to King George, asking him, "Can you please forgive us? Please forgive us." And he, of course, denies that olive branch petition. And so, shots haven't been fired yet. Now we have it. Lexington and Concord also takes place in 1775, which you guys all know was those first battles. And elemental BQ. We have the Second Continental Congress, which is assembled. They end up drafting the Declaration of Independence. (1776), right? 12 of the 13 colonies endorse it. New York does not. 55 people sign it. And of course, the most famous saying from this time is, if we don't hang together, we'll all hang apart. Very punny. All right. So you need to make sure that they stuck together through this and saw this thing through.
When was the second one?
76 is where the most famous articles come from it. We also have the Articles of Confederation that are drafted during this time as well. That, of course, was our first attempt at a national government. Didn't work too well. Now, listen. I'm going to talk about the war real quick under here, but I'm going to address one thing before I do. I am not going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of the war. That's in your Fast Track to 5 book. You guys need to read up on that. So does that make sense? So we're not going to spend a bunch of time talking about strengths and weaknesses. That's something you need to do independently and be ready to answer questions about it on a test. Now, generally speaking, in the grand scheme of things, the AP test for American history generally they don't tend to ask a lot of questions about battles in a war. Now, that could change for this year, but generally speaking, they like to look at causation. All right, so look at the strengths and the weaknesses of the military and read up on that on your own. So we're all the way on number 11 right now, which is the war itself. The turning point of the war. I think we're on chapter 3 right now, aren't we?
Yep.
Was Saratoga, which was fought in 1777. The reason why Saratoga is important is because it's after the Americans win in Saratoga that the French decide, hey, you know what, we're going to help these guys out. They have a shot at winning this thing. Up till that point, America was looking kind of bleak, and France didn't want to get involved because it was going to cost money. And if they lost, they might have to give something up in any kind of peace agreement. John. Was it Arnold?
No, Arnold was.
He was in Arnold. I think was up in Ticonderoga. I think.
Horatio Gates.
Horatio Gates. Isn't that the?
CSI Miami.
What's the family on the? All the American. No. What's the movie with Nicolas Cage?
He's got a lot of them. So.
Where he's an American history professor guy. American Treasure, isn't he? Isn't that the Gates? Isn't that the Gates family?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
There you go. Conspiracy.
All right. We also have the war ending here. The war ends in 1781. And of course, the world turned upside down is the exiting at the Battle of Yorktown. Okay. Everybody got this stuff? Alright, we're gonna keep on going.
How did the Battle of Yorktown decide the war?
He was well, a lot of things led up to it, but he was surrounded and he didn't have a chance to get out, so he basically surrendered because he would have lost.
He only surrendered his men.
But he was the major general of the.
He was the fighting Quaker.
And their fleet got defeated sending stuff. By a little.
John, I don't know the history of it as far as how many battles took place after the fact, but I do know that there were other armies, I'm sure. Well, I can't say for sure. There were troops that weren't in Yorktown. News might have traveled kind of slow. Andrew Jackson was famous for the Battle of New Orleans in the War of 1812, and of course, as we know, that battle took place after the peace terms had already kind of come to be signed. So, all right, let's talk about the old Treaty of Paris. Treaty of Paris.
Why is it always Treaty of Paris? Why can't it be in
Because they probably want to get together in Paris. I mean, Ben Franklin went there all the time. He had good times in Paris. Hey, AT. It's not about Ben Franklin visiting brothels.
They're not going to hear you.
All right. We were all thinking it. All right. Treaty of Paris. It's Britain formally and unconditionally recognizes the independence of the U.S. So there's a recognition there. There's also boundaries that were established. Of course, north at the Canadian border and along the Great Lakes, basically west to the Mississippi and south to Florida. Florida at this time, when a separate treaty had been returned to Britain, by Britain to Spain, so it wasn't part of the deal. Andrew Jackson. American fishing ships. American fishing ships. We're given unlimited access to water surrounding Newfoundland. Newfoundland? There we go. Newfoundland, I can't say that word.
He said Newfoundland.
That's how it's spelled. It's Newfoundland, though, right? Is that how they say it up there up in Canada, eh? It's the Newfoundland there, eh? You know, that's where we're going.
Maple syrup, eh?
Maple syrup. Watch the Motley Crue concerts. All right, score the puck.
A. They got the A at the end.
There also part of the agreement was that the U.S. government agreed it would not interfere legally with British creditors and merchants seeking to collect debts owed to them by Americans. So,
Merchants and creditors.
yep. They won't interfere with them wanting to collect on their debts. Another big one here. The U.S. would compensate Tories, people who stayed loyal to Great Britain during the time, for any property that they may have lost. And I don't have it written down, but I believe that part of all of this is that Great Britain's going to eventually get out of the Ohio River Valley with their troops as well, right? And this last one becomes kind of a sticking point because we don't compensate the Tories, and Britain doesn't leave Ohio right away with their troops, and so that leads into the War of 1812, right? Any questions on that, folks? Okay. I think it's important right now to recognize the fact that, at this time, your textbook talks about how about a third of the people really were in favor of this war in America, right? We had about a third of the people who were indifferent and a third of the people who remained loyal. So we won this war against the most powerful nation at the time with basically a third of the population of the colonies. Now, people think that that's really outstanding, and it is. At the end of the day, it's pretty tough to squash a rebellion. All right, people really have it in their minds that they want to do it. It's not a very easy thing, especially if you have to travel across an ocean to go squash it. All right, let's talk about women and blacks in the American Revolution. This is number 13. Women. Played a very important role here. Number one is they helped to keep farms and businesses afloat. During the war here. They also helped soldiers in battle. We've got women who were nurses, aides, and a few actually fought. Was Molly Pitcher? Did you both talk about her at all? I'm trying to think if she was, I can't remember. Molly Pitcher. Somebody Google that. Molly Pitcher. Mollypitcher. See if I'm even in the right ballpark here. Abigail Adams was an influential woman during the time. A woman during the time. She told her husband in her letters and correspondence, don't forget about the women here. We're talking about independence. We're talking about new freedoms. Let's not leave those people out. They're half of our population. At the end of the day, women helped out with the cause quite a bit. They're a lot, though, in life. They didn't really receive any more rights. After the War of Independence than they did when they were still British subjects.
What state was it that gave them suffrage right away?
Utah.
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
What's the rest of them?
Utah? I dropped around race.
FTT5 says that?
Yeah.
New Jersey did? Blacks and the Revolution.
That is actually FTT5.
Don't ask me, John. Blacks were not allowed to fight initially. Some enlist later in the war. About 5,000 fought for the colonies, but ended up serving in separate brigades. And perhaps the most undervalued piece of history that we have as to insight about slavery in America is we never talk about the fact that 20,000 blacks fought for Britain. They were promised their freedom, and that promise was kept for many of them after the war.
They gained freedom in the U.S. or they go back to Britain?
I believe they probably either went back to Britain. I don't think they stood where they were. I don't think they stayed, stuck around. Other colonies maybe, but they didn't. They were given their freedom essentially. The U.S. wouldn't recognize that though, right? So they had to leave.
Good old America.
Yeah, great stuff. All right, a couple of key people here to write down. We've got people you should know. George Washington. We've got Charles Townshend. Sam Adams.
Sammy.
Paul Revere. There's John Adams. T. Jeff. That's Thomas Jefferson for all of you guys that aren't hip and down with it.
Oh, yeah.
Patrick Henry. What'd you say, John? You said word?
Yeah.
Word, dog.
And of course, Richard Henry Lee, who is I believe, a great uncle of Robert E. Lee, who was the one who said at the Second Continental Congress, we ought to be free and independent. He made the parliamentary notion. So he helped to create it. His son, his great nephew, tried to destroy it. All right, questions at all for anybody? I'm going to start recording. Oh, let me say one thing here while I'm still recording. Whenever we look at all of this stuff here, this huge list that we had was the A through Q of different events that led up to the American Revolution. Do you have to memorize all of those? No. No, those are what I would call, those are my little nuggets, folks. Okay, those are things that you can include as pieces of evidence into your writing to help make sure that your point is well made. So it's really important you understand the process here, but know that, hey, I don't have to have everything down necessarily. I can simply have some of those in my mind going to the AP exam. All right.